Hello, and welcome to episode number 116 for the National Land Realty Podcast, where we discuss all things land. Our goal here is to inform, educate, and entertain those of you who own land or are interested in the buying and selling of land throughout the United States. My name is Mac Christian. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at National Land Realty, and I will be your host for this episode. Now, Craig Popingue is a part of the BuckVentures Pro staff out of Missouri. This year, National Land Realty offered the BuckVentures Pro staff a chance to win a Colorado pronghorn hunt by submitting a photo to a photo contest on Facebook, and Craig came out as the winner. The way he came out of the winner, you want to hear this. This is not the end of the story, and it gets much better. Now, sit back and enjoy. Okay, I am here with Craig Popingue, and we're essentially talking about the year. We're gonna call this like a lifetime year. This is a pretty epic year that you've had going on. Part of it incorporates a hunt that we sent you on, but that's not the full story. But I kind of want to start, and we're gonna jump into that. But Craig, I wanna kind of just ask kind of how we got here, because you're pro staff for BuckVentures, and that's how this kind of all came about. But you have a background in agriculture. Just tell us a little bit about your background and sort of how you got involved with BuckVentures in the first place.
Yeah, well, my background has been, I've grown up in rural Missouri and worked for the local co-op, and then now for the regional co-op. I should say at the corporate level. The moral of the story is BuckVentures in January. You know how it is. We're slow. We're exploring YouTube. I ran across Jeff Danker's video about an open call for his pro staff meeting in April. And so I signed up, went down and met that great group of Christian folks in Oklahoma. We celebrated the Lord in hunting for, I think, 2.5 days. Outstanding folks. So it's just an open call to do what we all need to do anyhow, and that's pray for one another. So I found this brotherhood of the BuckVentures team to be so much more than an outdoor show. It's much more than harvesting an animal. We're daily chatting with one another on Facebook. Somebody's got a prayer concern. We're all there. It's incredible. So then when the National Land email came to post your best picture of land to win an antelope hunt, I'm all in. I spent 32 years at that grain elevator in our hometown of Sweet Springs. So when everybody's hunting in September, October out west, right, we're dumping corn and beans in our busiest time of the year. So changing careers, I changed careers in 2013 to become an accountant so that I could enjoy some of that September, October weather. And so it's opened doors in the last few years. I guess in 2019, I went on my first antelope hunt with a bow in South Dakota. Mac, that rancher took me out, dropped me off in the blind, said, I'll be back to get you at dark. I called him before he rattled the cattle guard getting back to his ranch, and he said, what'd you forget? And I said, nothing. I harvested an antelope. He said, no way. So we drove like 13 hours from our house to western South Dakota, and I harvested an antelope within 15 minutes of getting in the blind with an arrow.
You had one. I'm jealous of your experience in agriculture, because it sounds a lot more positive than mine. My family had a feed mill that they built, and when I was growing up, I was one of those kids that didn't like to listen very much. And so I got shipped off every summer. My grandpa was a World War II vet, and my uncle had no patience for a kid like me. So I got shipped off to work with them every summer. And that's how I learned how to mind my manners. was exactly. Working in a feed mill. And so yours sounds like a much more positive venture. Harvesting an antelope pronghorn within 15 minutes is insane. It just walked up on you?
Yeah, it literally walked up to the water hole behind. I had like 14 does and fawns in front of me, and then this buck was out about 40 yards whenever I harvested him. But that grew this love of antelope hunting, right? So then when National Lands contest came out for the BuckVentures crew, I had gone in 2020 or 2021 to the sandhills of Nebraska on a spot and stalk antelope hunt, which I recommend nobody over 55 does.
I was just gonna say, if you knew how many people that are around me that have hunted them, and it's always like a 400-yard shot. It's
uh,
it chased them for miles.
with a rifle, it's much more difficult, it seems like, than with a bow, than what it has been for me with a bow. That year we were setting glassing in Nebraska a couple of years ago, the picture that won the national land contest. And I was just taking in the sandhills, the the beauty of this grass. There's no houses, there's no lights, there's just a sea of grass and sand and cactus, right? And animals. And I'm taking basically a panorama. I assume you've seen the picture, but
Yes.
I took it, sent it to my wife, and I said, we say hello from here because I'd left her at home. And then when the contest opened up, I'm like, I have the perfect picture for this, right? I love antelope hunting. I love everything ag. I'm in the middle of God's creation. I take this picture. It's got to win, right? So I'm watching the contest on Facebook. We're ahead because a few of my friends jumped on. Then the boy out of Georgia had that beautiful picture of the cross on
Yes.
the pond dam. And I knew, boy, it's going to be tough because you can't beat Christ, right? And I told folks here at work, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to win. We can't beat the cross, and I still affirm to that. But the moral of the story is some of the kids along your life, you touch people all the way through your life, Mac. So one of the kids that I had bought 4-H and FFA animals from at one of the fairs jumped on my post and shared it and said, hey, let's help Poppy win. And then the next one jumped on, and the next one jumped on. And then because I know what it costs to antelope hunt, I know how much I love it, I started messaging people on Facebook. I'm like, hey, share this. And then I have a high school friend who is in Italy that blows glass. I messaged her. Now, she must not be on Facebook because she didn't respond. But my wife has a friend in Denmark. So I messaged her and I'm like, hey, let's share this in another country. So we got the national land contest. So we got a little global input, and we got folks in different parts of the world to like it. And I think at one time I had counted like 19 states because everybody we touches someone else. And then when we blew through, the night that the contest was done and I knew that I won, I reached out to the boy in Georgia and said, your picture should have won. Next year, if they have another contest, I'm all in. I'm going to do whatever I can do to help you, brother. So he's in Georgia, and we have this conversation, and he's thanking me and congratulating me, and he's like, where are you at? And I tell him. He's been coming up and hunting within 15 minutes of my house for like the last 10 years.
Oh, that's incredible.
So the world is so small.
Yeah, yeah. So, in a little bit of background here. So us at National Land Realty, we work with the BuckVentures team. We collaborate on a few things. There's people with them that are agents with us, and then there's it's a cool network that we have with them. It's a great partnership. They're great people. And so to give back every year, we do this photo contest, and we've arranged a few different things, but photo contest is kind of how we've done it, to be able to engage and give back to the BuckVentures pro staff. And it's just people like Craig here. And so this one was a picture of post your best land shot, where we work with land sales, and whoever gets the most likes wins. And we were following the contest, and you had this crazy rally, like a whole community rallied around you to get you the likes. Because my team was following it here, and it was really incredible to watch because we were sitting in meetings during the week, and like, are you seeing this one? Like, this guy has this entire community like rallying to his side to send him on this hunt. This is incredible. And so we watched the whole thing go down. It was really neat.
It literally is coworkers. It's people that I've worked with through the years and kids that I bought FFA animals from. They just rallied. It was fantastic.
That's good. So tell me a little bit about the hunt. So, right, like, we pulled the photo contest. You had all friends, family in Denmark have evidently
Yeah.
rallied around to send you on a pronghorn hunt in Colorado. Tell me about Trinidad. Tell me about, like what was that like?
Right. So when we find out one of the contests is in Trinidad, and I realize it's within 20 miles of the hunt that I had booked a couple of years ago with Eichlers. But so we're going to Trinidad. My wife rides along. She's just going to stay at the hotel or the Airbnb and use my truck in town. But we get there and we met Chris Faria and his guide. My guide was Gary Terry, aka Gordo. So Gordo and I hit it off. We go out. We go out to the farm to the day of the hunt to look for antelope, and it's a mix of range and cactus where the antelope hunting was. Down the road, there's some alfalfa pivots and stuff, and we saw tons and tons of antelope on that trip down that road. But we got to meet the landowner, Mr. George, and Mr. George, not being a guide, but just being the landowner, he was vested in us. He wanted us to get animals, so he's riding around in his pickup in the mornings. When we get to the ranch, he'd be out looking, riding, and he'd be like, "I saw some over here. You need to go check out this section." But
And this is
we go, huh?
this is with Vision Quest Hunt, right?
Yes, Vision Quest yes, sir, out of Trinidad.
And tell me a little bit about the outfit. Like, what's the lay of the land there? What's the setup like? Tell me about that.
So Mr. Chris had an Airbnb for us, which was not too far from where we hunted. It was between Trinidad and Hohonee, Colorado. So it was a great building. Ryan, your agent from Omaha, Ryan Schroeder, was there. Huh?
Oh no, Mr. Schroeder.
Yeah, you know Ryan.
Oh, I know Ryan.
Ryan's in camp. Jeremy came in from Arkansas, but Jeremy had to leave before the hunt actually got started, or just as we got started. But wonderful Airbnb, a local custom hay harvester's wife, Karen Bird, cooked for us. Mr. Chris and his crew are exceptional folks. They're some of the kindest, nicest people that you ever want to meet. As a matter of fact, when I went back out for my elk and mule deer hunt with Eichlers, I actually took some of the antelope that we harvested to Chris and to my guide. I took them some snack sticks that we had made from the antelope, and just to pick on them, right? We go on hunts, but we see more creation and we build more relationships, right? I've never been on a hunt that we don't exchange Christmas cards or text with the ranchers, the landowners, the guides. I mean, you build friends for life if you do it right. So that's what we're hunting, huh? We're hunting to be more of the world.
Absolutely. Well, in the outfit too, Vision Quest, this is the second year that we've worked with them, and our CEO, Ronnie Richardson, has a relationship with them, and they have, everyone that we have sent out there has had just a wonderful, wonderful experience with that team. So I definitely want to make sure to give them a shout out for
absolutely
together, because they've been really, really great to work with.
Sorry,
go ahead.
I was going to say the food is exceptional. Mr. Chris dialed us in with steaks, and Karen had appetizers for us every night. So we had appetizers, fellowship, great steaks, and so wonderful trip. The hunting's all spot and stalk.
Okay, yeah. Tell me about the hunt.
Absolutely the exact opposite of when I go set water holes with a bow. Because when we're out spotting and stalking and that country is wide open, it's hard to find any place to hide. The antelope are at 400 or 500 yards and they're on a dead run.
I was going to say, speed goats have very, very good eyes.
They make good gravy, though. Oh.
That is true.
The first day, I was unsuccessful. I took a shot and just simply missed, and I know that it was adrenaline and nerves because we started this process in, what was it, June or July on the contest, right? So you had the 30 days of anticipation, and then you have the 30 days or then we had from till October to anticipate going. But the moral of the story is, then the second day, we set and glassed, and we saw a few good antelope. We never saw the right antelope. But as the day progressed, we were driving across the ranch and we spotted a really good antelope. I jumped out of the truck. Gordo went to get the better vantage point on it, and it just so happened that I got the antelope in at 329 yards and decided that my CVA and Vortex were up to the challenge. And so I harvested the antelope. Gordo comes back, picks me up. I did what every good client should do. I made sure that he field dressed my antelope for me.
There we go. You didn't even have to get your hands dirty?
I didn't even have to get my hands dirty. So then, but I will say this much for Colorado, the wildlife division there is wonderful. We met them. They checked us. They checked us on the road. They made sure that everything was up to snuff. We had a great interaction. He had a trainee with him. So my kudos to them and their management program and the fact that they're out there taking care of everyone. But it's just been a God thing for me all the way around, because the hunt turned out to be in the same vicinity of the hunt that I was going on later that I'd booked for myself. You know, my 60-year goal was to go on. Everybody wants to harvest a nice mule deer, or everybody that's been reading Outdoor Life since they're 7, right? So it just came together for me this month.
Yeah. So in the background to fill anybody in, we're going to go into this a little bit too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because this is an epic year, is that you had already booked a hunt for mule deer and elk. And it happened to, you said it ended up being across the fence line from.
Yeah, it was separated. It was separated by a county road.
I want to know about the mule deer and the elk too. I got to hear about that.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you. I have many times to everyone that liked the post, everyone that supported me. National Land for sponsoring the contest in BuckVentures. It's just a wonderful organization. And so the elk hunt and the mule deer hunt, I arrived in the same area, Trinidad, delivered the antelope meat to Gordo and Mr. Faria. I'm sorry, I struggle with that. It's Faria. Chris, yeah. Faria. Chris, my apologies if you're listening to the podcast. It's just been exciting. I'm sorry.
This is a crazy year. No, this is an exciting thing.
It's crazy. I watched Fred Eichler on TV for 20 some years, and the chance to go hunt his camp. But the moral of the story is, we arrived there. I got there the 24th, I think it was, of October. Got up the morning of the 25th, and I drove to Raton, New Mexico. Those of your listeners who might listen to are NRA members. The Whittington Center's in Raton, New Mexico. So I went out there and sighted in my rifle and took in that facility. It's a beautiful facility, by the way. Then drove back to the ranch and met my guide, Seth Krumer. Met the other guys in camp. Have made some lifelong friends in Virginia now from that hunt. But they said, is anybody willing to go sleep in Muddy Blind tonight? Because you'll be in the field when the elk are there in the morning. We won't risk scaring them off. So we drive to Eichler's East Ranch to go get in our blinds, and we get there. There's already 150 to 200 elk out on the alfalfa fields. They're already out of the rivers. So they drive us up and use the pickup so that the elk don't see any people walking. And then I climb in the blind with my sleeping bag. I have a plate of meatballs and spaghetti sauce on pasta that I take in the blind with me. So I'm in for the night. And what an experience to sleep in a muddy blind and listen to, we're saying 150 to 300 elk, because the field was literally full all night long, and they mewed back and forth. You're far enough away from town that there's no light refraction, so it's falling stars and satellites all night. sandhill cranes are flying over the Purgatory River, and you're just listening to constant mews, a few elk pushing on one another, and then the bulls bugling back and forth. I won't say it was a life-changing event, but it was pretty God thing. So then
elk do that. When you're in the wilderness and you're out there in a tent and you hear elk bugle, it's a noise you can't replicate, right? It's haunting and it's amazing and it's such a cool sound when you hear it, and it's so intense, right? Like it's a powerful noise.
It is, and to hear a bull east a half mile and then a bull maybe a mile west, and they just back and forth. So it was incredible. The next morning, of course, it got dark at like 6, right? So you wake up at 10 at night and you think, oh man, it's almost time it's 10 o'clock. So I got to sleep for another 8 hours before elk season starts. But we wake up the next morning, the herd's still out in the alfalfa field. And then, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes past shooting time, the gentleman from Virginia harvests his elk. I'm actually filming the herd with my camera. I turn it off because he hasn't taken a shot. He shoots the minute I turn it off, and I turn it back on. I catch all the elk running off the field, but then didn't know how long it would be. About 2.5, 3 hours later, then I caught one coming down the river, and so I harvested my elk. It'd be a 6x6, but he's broke up from fighting. Incredible to me. They weighed all the bulls. We took all the bulls in we were able to pick them up with a tractor down on the river with a tractor and loader, but we took them all in. Steve's weighed 732 pounds. Mine weighed 723 pounds. And then you're like, okay, I got to get all this home.
Uh-huh.
So there's a locker in Aguilera. So we dropped them off the locker in Aguilera, paid a little extra to have them quick processed. And then I was able to, I set out Sunday then from hunting. I didn't go mule deer hunting Sunday. I let the guys in camp go elk hunting with the guides. And then Monday, Seth took me out on the mule deer hunt. And within 20 minutes, we were in mule deer. We got out and looked. And he's like, it's up to you. And I'm like, man, I've waited my lifetime to do this. I'd like to shoot one just a little better. We're driving up the mountain, and we're above the Spanish Peaks, or not above them, but parallel to the Spanish Peaks. And then I will get it wrong, but the other mountains to the west are Sangre de Cristo, I think.
Okay.
It's the blood of Christ. The Spanish called them the blood of Christ because of the way the pink hue was on the snow whenever they first encountered them. I said, man, I'd like to really get out and take a picture of that. And I jump out to take a picture of that. We get back in the truck. We drive about 20 yards up the road, and you see this beautiful mule deer up on the mountain. So we go up, and then we try to make a stalk, and he gets over the mountain on me. Seth says, I have a plan, and I'm like, we're going to get out, right? We're going to go get him, right? And Seth's like, he's fine. We know where he's at. We'll go look around. We take about, 45-minute drive around the mountain. And Seth goes, we're going to go in. They have natural gas wells on their place. So the moral of the story is we opened the gate, drove up to a natural gas well to do some glassing. And Seth said, I thought he'd be here. I'm like, we're like a long ways from where we are. And he's like, no, we're about 250 yards from where we last saw him. So we go to leave, and I spot him off the side of the mountain. The moral of the story is when I got out and shot the mule deer, then I was at 20 yards when I got the mule deer.
Oh my God.
He's gonna score close to 170. So he's the highlight of my wife's. My wife is excited about the mule deer, Mac, because she knows it'll fit in the house in my office. She's not too sure about the elk head yet.
Those are significantly bigger. Let me tell you how, like, the whole experience that you had is just so amazing that, it's the trifecta, right? You got antelope, pronghorn, mule deer, and elk, right? Like that's the big three, especially out west. And to just like the way that the hunts went down is like they're great hunts. I went out this year. We always keep our GPSs on, and we did 10 miles of hiking, and we did, I think, 3,000 vertical feet up and down, right, of
Right.
hiking. And we hiked 1,500 feet up and got 7 miles in, and then we spotted the only buck we saw, and it's like and if you're talking antlers, like it's one of the more embarrassing antlers that I've ever had. But it was like we're back there, and I'm like, I don't think I want to take this buck. And my friend's with me, and they're like, we just put 7 miles on, and you wanted a buck, and there's a buck
Right.
in front of you. This is the buck. Take the buck. and, and it was exactly that. You're like, are you here for a trophy or meat? And I'm like, I'm here for meat. So like we got the buck out and then hiked it down. And I don't know, I think my feet grew. And so like I had like I couldn't wear socks for a week because every one of my toes was bleeding. So I got this tiny buck and bloody feet, and you pulled all three in a matter of week. Like it's incredible. Like I'm jealous, of course, but I also like I think that I think your character yields. I think you earned it. Like it's one of those like I'm really really happy for you and your experience and the way that people have rallied around you to send you on your pronghorn hunt and as your 60th birthday. Like this is a whole thing. This whole thing came together in this incredible year. That's like wow. Okay, like good job.
Yeah, it has been the most humbling ever. Now, Mac, my wife and I own 120 acres in Missouri. I have killed one fantastic deer with my bow there, in my opinion. He's a half inch shy of Pope and Young. Saturday morning in the pouring down rain, I'm in an old wood box blind that I built 20 years ago. And I have a 135 to 140 class whitetail. And I just totally blew it, my friend. I don't know if I either hit the camera tripod or my bow cam hit the wood blind, but I made a horrible shot on a whitetail. Because you want to talk about it was going to be quadrifecta, right? Because I was going to have a pronghorn, an elk, a mule deer, and now a whitetail that has to go to the taxidermist, and I just totally blew it. And I told my friends, I said, I'm pretty sure that I was just scared to tell my wife that one more head was going to the taxidermist.
You know, and that's I think you need those. Like no matter how experienced you are, you've got to have those terrible experiences because it just reminds you like it's not supposed to be easy. You know, like
Yeah, well, right.
you gotta
I humble pie.
uh-huh. Exactly that. Exactly that.
Humble pie, but I want to go back to Chris for just a minute.
Yes,
And
sir.
Chris's crew at Vision Quest. They fed us well, and I have to shout out to Karen Burr. We've all had jalapeno poppers, right? So we've all had jalapeno poppers, but Miss Karen took those yellow and orange and red sweet peppers that you get, and she filled those with cream cheese and wrapped them in bacon and put them on the grill for the lighter stomach folks.
Uh-huh.
I'm hooked. It's all in on that deal. But then, if you're ever in Trinidad, Colorado, Gordo took us downtown to the barbecue place in Trinidad because green chilies are big in Trinidad, right? Everything's about the green chili. So we had to go to town and have green chili fries to celebrate the antelope to celebrate the antelope harvest. And then I can't think where I was going next, but the town's full of history, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it wasn't just it wasn't just I mean the whole thing, right? Like you go there to Trinidad and you know it's the hosting and it's the town and the history and the hunt and the scenery. I mean it's a full encompassing experience. Like it's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, it's great, Mike. So the first day that we went out on the antelope hunt, my father and one of his friends raised cattle in the 70s, and their electric brand for their cattle was AP. And Gary Terry and I are out spotting for antelope, and I look down and there's a piece of green glass on the prairie, and I pick it up, and it has an AP on it, which is almost an exact of my copy of my dad and Anderson's brand.
Oh, wow.
So I have this little piece of green broken glass from probably the late 1800s, early 1900s. That that insulator shade of glass that has the AP brand on it. So I was like, Dad's on the hunt with me.
Oh,
But
man. You've had yourself an incredible year, man.
it's fantastic. But Chris's crew went above and beyond, right? So Gary's done with us with the hunt. He's fulfilled his duties after the antelope's processed. But I said, well, Patty and I'd like to do a little sightseeing. Gary's like, well, if you don't mind, I'll tag along and I'll take you some places. So west of Trinidad is Stonewall, right? Every state that has the Rocky Mountains has the vertical Stonewall. So we went west of Trinidad and we visited the Stonewall, and he took us up to a lake where he fished and down a road so that we can enjoy the fall colors of the aspens.
Mm-hmm.
And then Gary says, well, if you take this blacktop to the right, I'll take you out here and we'll show you some elk. So we drove down that road that night and witnessed the elk, which that was like October 6th or 7th.
Yeah.
And I know I'm coming back in 3 weeks to elk hunt. So just to see him and hear him bugle then for the first time was incredible. But that country is full of old coal mines. So he showed us the old coke furnaces where they used to dry the coal before it was transported out of the mountains. And so I've learned some history. On the last hunt, Ludlow, there was a massacre at Ludlow, Colorado. These miners went on strike, and the mining company had according to the gentleman there, the mining company had the striking workers, and they had the government come in, and they actually shot these striking miners and their families. So they took us by the old schoolhouse that's shot full of bullet holes, the foundation shot full of bullet holes that you can still see. And yeah, it's an incredible area with a lot of history. So
that's wild. So as you're, we're closing in December, are you going to try to equal this whole experience sometime? Is this one that you, like, how do you top it? What are you going to do?
I don't think you can top it, Mac. I really don't. It's just been surreal. So just to get off subject, my wife's going to have a knee replacement next week. So because it's a right leg, I'm going to take a leave from work and be home to be nursemaid for my wife for a month and a half. So that'll be my longest career stint away from work outside of, I work for such a great company. They let me take off for the hunt that I won and then take off for the planned hunt. So I have to say kudos to my employer too, for letting me take these ventures on my 60th. But
I think you have to. I think as an employer, you got to let somebody go on that type of adventure. That's a requirement.
That's exactly what they said when I won the hunt. They're like, absolutely, because I prepared the grain financial statement, which is always the first, from the 5th to about the 8th working day of every month, we're covered up. You come in whether if you're bleeding from the eyes, you need to be here so that it's done. And they're like, no, you want to hunt, you're going. So
that's excellent. That's excellent. So are there plans in mind? Are you going to go back out to Colorado or get out west again? Or
I've talked to Chris. I want to go back and hunt with the Vision Quest guys. I'd like to go chase them. I'd like to go chase a mule deer with them. You know what I mean? The challenge.
Yeah.
If you can find some fellowship like your buddy to go along and aggravate you and say, no, you're going to shoot that because we walked till our feet are bleeding. When I harvested the antelope in Nebraska, that was the hardest earned one I've ever done because we walked 19 miles the first day.
Yep.
Right.
There's your typical, that's how it usually goes.
and that's by my Fitbit, but we're laying there and you're glassing for antelope, and the guide reaches over and taps you. Well, I'm from Missouri. We don't have cactus. The guide taps me on the shoulder to move, and then I roll over and sit right astraddle of a cactus. You know how that day went. But your feet are bleeding and your boots are too new. And then when you finally harvest an animal, it's just a celebration all the way around. So,
Oh yeah, I had a neighbor of mine just decided to hunt for the first time. I think he's just shy of 40, and his hunting experience encompassed going up to a ridge line that he'd never been to, throwing out a tent, and then 8 inches of snow fell, and he had to evacuate because his tires weren't quite up to the challenge. So he had to get out of there so that he could make it out. And I guess he ran off the road on his way out, and then like had to figure out a way to get his truck out, and like all these things. And he's like, and he was acting really disappointed about the whole thing. And I was like, no, like that is the point. Like
right.
you just hunted. That's more of the equation. Like you just had an adventure, right? Like you just did the thing that's what all of us do. And just a successful hunt's the cherry on the top. Like that's the piece there. But to close the deal, that just it makes it great.
Uh, it does make it great. And I attended Jim Shockey's film premiere because he did it in Independence, Missouri. But the moral of the story is then Jim's point was he hunts to challenge himself, right?
Yes, very much so. Yes.
It's pushing ourselves to the limit to see. He said, I'm most alive when I'm scared to be alive. So that's pretty incredible in itself. But back on this last hunt, after we had finished in camp, there were 7 of us in camp. We took 7 elk and 2 mule deer. Then the gentleman from Virginia and his son, I said, pile in, we'll go ride around. We'll drive up to the Spanish Peaks and look. We had got up there the first night just driving down the gravel road, and we ran into elk. And I mean elk, because we drove down the road, and as far as we drove, we never got out of elk. We turned around to come back, Mac, and I looked at the odometer, and we were like 1.1 mile of elk that were 20 to 30 wide, and we didn't understand why, right? Is this natural? Is it normal? Well, it's one of Colorado's farming for wildlife ranches. So they tell me that it takes a resident like 24 years to draw a tag there. But we still didn't understand why there were so many elk on that road. Well, a week after I got home from this last hunt, Trinidad got 60 inches of snow.
They drop.
Yeah. So I think we know why I think part of the success was everything was pushed down knowing what's coming, but I don't know. It's just been an unbelievable month. My wife owns a second deep freeze now because our empty deep freeze at home is now full to the brim.
You're going to be the expert in every type of venison there is.
My boss here at work, her dad is no longer able to go to Colorado and hunt, so I brought a cooler in for them and sent that we'll go to South Missouri this week. So I've delivered antelope to Colorado. We've got some elk going to South Missouri to someone who will truly appreciate it.
Uh-huh.
And so we'll have plenty of neighborhood feeds at home this winter. But
that's wonderful. I mean, I always tell people, like, my family, we've had so much venison over the years that like beef is almost weird to me now. Like when I have beef, it's just different because it's always been elk and deer, and it's always kind of this thing. It's such a great food source, and elk is so good.
It absolutely is. And Mac, we live in a generation, I mean, we're probably 1 to 2 generations removed, but when as a child, we counted on those fall harvests for groceries, right?
Yes. Yes.
As much of America did. So that's another reason why I belong to the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, National Wild Turkey Federation, because there may become a need again someday in America for families and definitely, just getting folks outdoors to see wildlife changes their whole opinion, right? Their whole mood changes, huh?
Absolutely does. Well, awesome. Well, Craig, one, I'm jealous of your experience, but I also think that I it you can't be totally jealous of an experience like that because I'm also just excited for you. Like I'm very just it's so cool. So I just want to thank you for your time, and I'm so glad that you won. I mean, just getting to know you over our conversation, like you're a neat individual, and it's so cool to be able to send somebody like you for an experience like that. From a company perspective, I know Ronnie, our CEO, kind of spearheaded this, and I'm sure that he feels the same way. And I'm sorry that you had to hang out with Schroeder for no, I'm kidding. Like Schroeder's one of my Ryan Schroeder is one of my favorite people in our company. So I'm excited that you got to hang out with him as well. So no, it's just really cool. Like, thank you for your time and going through this too. This is such a heck of a year.
No, thank you. I said maybe my retirement job will be a land broker for National Land Realty when I get tired of the screen gig, right?
Heck yeah, man, get over here.
I remind my wife, Mac, and I won't take up any more of your time, but I remind my wife two things. If she'd have let me buy all the land in the neighborhood when we were getting started and didn't have it, right? So we bought our first 40 acres for 500 an acre.
Oh my gosh.
Then when we bought the 80 in 2001, it was 1250 an acre. Now it's about 11.5 an acre. So two things folks need to remember when they're looking at land. Chances are it'll never be as cheap as it is now. And then the best advice that my other neighbors said was, is if it joins you, it's worth another 1,000 an acre to you. And if it's for sale, it will probably never be for sale again in your lifetime. So buy it, son.
I agree with that sentiment.
So, Mac, I appreciate it, Mr. Ronnie. Thank you, and to Liv and the ladies at National Land that are doing the background work. Absolutely, kudos to them too. So
I love that you remember Liv's name. Liv is our digital marketing specialist, and she is phenomenal. So thank you.
Well, I'm only here because I've only made it in my career was only successful because of those employees that I had and those coworkers who supported me. And I only won National Land because it was a God thing, and those kids repaid me for taking care of them in their youth. So thank you, Mac.
Yes, sir. Thank you too, Craig.
You guys be good.
This concludes episode 116 for the National Land Realty podcast, discussing one of the greatest hunting years you're ever going to hear about with BuckVentures Pro staff member Craig Poppingay out of Missouri. You can learn more about land ownership and the buying and selling of land at nationalland.com.